Yeah, thank you, everyone, and thank you for the BGS community for organizing this nice conference in Paris. Let's just set the things up. OK. So for those who don't know me, I'm Kawtar. I'm a software engineer, and also I'm creating content on the internet, either on Twitter, YouTube, etc. You will find me under the handle Choubari _. And in my personal website, you will find all the materials of this talk. So before defining what is partial pre-rendering, because this is a feature that has been shipped into the Next.js framework, so basically this presentation will be more focused on Next.js. And before defining if this feature is a hype or innovation, I want to go back to give you some context why we are at this moment. So we will start by defining some server-side things and rendering strategies. The first thing is server-side rendering. So you obviously know how it works, but let's just do a small recap about it. So we have at the first the client requesting the page, and then we will have the Next.js server that will fetches and do all the other things, either from fetching data from external APIs or databases, getting responses, and then they will render our React code into markup that will be sent back to the browser, and the client will receive it and download it to show up the screen. On the other hand, we have static site generation. So in this case, we will have the Next.js server at the build time. We will do all the data fetching ahead of time to generate the pages and render the markup at the build time. Then it will be served to the CDN network. So, and when the client will request the page, we will get back the files from the CDN directly. So basically, after the build time, there is no interaction with the server back. Now, how Next.js work, they have actually two rendering strategies. The first one is static rendering. So as we said previously, you will only interact with the pre-generated pages at the build time directly from the CDN. And they have also another rendering strategy, which is dynamic rendering, where we will interact with the server at each request. And basically, the dynamic rendering happens when you have in your code or in your page dynamic APIs like incoming header requests, cookies, or uncached API requests. So when you have a Next.js project, each page will be rendered in a different strategy. So basically, for example, if you have a personal website, for example, the pages that are static will be rendered here statically, and the other pages that requires dynamic data will be rendered with the dynamic rendering. And I will explain why my blog/Slack page is rendered dynamically in a few moments. So yeah, let's try to compare these both strategies to understand the pros and cons of each one. First, with static rendering, we pre-render the pages at build time, so the HTML generated is generated once and reused for each request. This is more suitable, of course, for blogs and docs, marketing pages, etc., because the content changes infrequently. And of course, as a pro of this rendering strategy, we have the faster page load times, since the markup is already generated at build time. And of course, since there will be no server rendering required at each page request, we will have lower server overhead. But for the cons of this rendering strategy, we will need to rebuild each time for content updates. And of course, since our pages will be static, so basically they will require longer build time. And of course, this is not suitable as a strategy for dynamic pages. On the other side, we have the dynamic rendering, which renders the pages on demand for each request. So the HTML is actually generated on the server upon each visit. And this makes this strategy suitable for dashboards, e-commerce websites, or any web apps that requires frequent content updates. And since the content of our page will be real-time and fresh content each time, it makes that the pages rendered dynamically are more interactive. And of course, no need to rebuild each time for each page, because we fetch directly the data from the server. Now, for the cons of this dynamic strategy, we have that for each page, the server side will require we will need extra server resources to carry out each request. And for each page requested, we will process the data, go call it from the API or external sources, and send it back to the client. So basically, this strategy is slower for static content, and it is not suitable at all. So at the moment, Next.js do a great job by separating all the pages of your web applications. The ones that have static content are rendered statically, and the ones that requires dynamic calls with the APIs are rendered dynamically. But what if we have some pages that contains at the same time static content and also calling some data from external resources? So we will need a sort of solution that will combine the two. And just by the way, I didn't mention that the static rendering is also called pre-rendering, because we pre-rendered all the pages at the build time. So now you have a clear idea what the word partial pre-rendering stands for. So the pre-rendering is basically the static rendering, and the partial means that we will play between the two. So basically, this feature is currently an experimental feature introduced in Next.js 14. And it is a new rendering model that will combine the benefits of the static pages and the ability and the personalization of the dynamic rendering. And we will have on the same page that will be rendered partial pre-rendering. We will benefit from both features. So let's see how we could implement this in a real-life example. Let's say you have an e-commerce website. So on the same page, you can spot some components that will not change for each user. For example, we have the navbar, the product image, the product description, which will be static for each user. And on the other hand, we have some dynamic data, for example, personalized recommendations, testimonials, for example, if our website is so popular like Amazon and we have testimonials coming up every minute. And last but not least, we have also the delivery time, which will be personalized for each user. And lastly, how many items are in the cart. So with partial pre-rendering, we will be able that each component that needs to be statically rendered will use static rendering, and the other components will be dynamically rendering, making the whole page rendered with the new model partial pre-rendering. You may be asking, what are the use cases other than the e-commerce website for using this kind of method strategy? Let me give you my blog website. I told you that it is dynamically rendered, and that's because I'm fetching the views count from the API, and I'm doing that with no cache store. So basically, for each request, I need to rebuild the whole page, even if a blog is basic. The content of the blog will not change too much. And so the drawback of the old rendering model is that the Next.js will spot this little component on my page, which is the view count, and will opt out the whole page to be dynamically rendered, while in case it should be statically rendered. So I believe that partial pre-rendering in some cases like that will play right. And of course, like we saw before, the e-commerce website. Now, you as a developer, how can you benefit from this feature to start using it in your Next.js project? First, in the development phase, you will need to enable the experimental flag in your Next.js config. And also for each dynamic content, each component that you will call an external API or database to get its data should be wrapped in a suspense boundaries. And to to actually notify that this is a dynamic content. And also, we will see why we will wrap our dynamic content in suspense in a few seconds. So after that, at the build time, what will happen actually is our Next.js server will try to render the pages that we have in our project, and it will generate a static shell for each page of your app, leaving some kind of holes for dynamic content. And these holes will be actually the fallback of your suspense boundaries. And this static shell that is generated at the build time will be served from an edge network. So basically, in the deployment phase, all the generated pages will be saved in the CDN or edge network, and they will be served directly. So we will have our page first. We will have our page with pretty rendered static content. And for the dynamic parts on our page, we will have some sort of loading states waiting for fetching them from the server. If it is still not clear for you, I will try to explain it in this second graph. So here we have our Next.js server, where we will render all the pages of our application. The static pages will be rendered with the static rendering, but the dynamic pages that use suspense, and also if you have enabled the PPR flag, they will be rendered with the partial pre-rendering model, where we will generate the static shell at the build time, and they will be stored in the CDN. Now, when the client will request a new page, they will be served with a static shell directly from the CDN. So this page will contain already built markup and placeholders for the dynamic content, along with references for CSS and JavaScript. So the browser will, at the first render, will render this static shell, and they begin downloading the CSS and JavaScript. And also, because the static shell will contain embedded links of the actual requests for dynamic content, they will call the Next.js server to get back the dynamic content, so we can, at the end, replace our holes with the dynamic content getting from the Next.js server. Now, before going to how I used actually partial pre-rendering in my case, I just want to share with you an example of how the Next.js team presented this feature to the public. So, this is an e-commerce website. I will try to reload the page so you can see actually how the partial pre-rendering plays in our case. So to do that and to be able to notice the difference, I will try to set a very to mimic a slow network connection so we can see actually all the things happening on the UI render. I will try to reload the page. And now, as we can see, instead of having a blank page waiting for the whole page to be dynamically rendered and served from the server, we will at the first served with this static shell that contains all the static data. For example, the price, the product description, product title. Also, the product image, we already received it, so it's downloading in the background. And we are also served with loading placeholders of the recommendations, the delivery time at the top. And yeah, so the main advantage of this rendering model is the user will not be faced with a blank screen at the beginning of the page. They will have some sort of content waiting for the dynamic content to be served. And now we can see that the image is downloaded. And after that, we got the delivery time. So this is another pros of this rendering model. Let's say you call different APIs requests. For example, you will calculate the delivery time. You will have the recommendations and the comments. So let's say the delivery time we got our response very early. So we will not wait for the other requests to finish. We will start by serving the delivery time, waiting for other things to be served from the server. And yeah, at the end, we will have all our page rendered, having it at the end fully interactive, and replacing all the placeholders and loading states with dynamic data. Now, let me share with you how I actually use that in my project. First, you need to be sure that you are using a Next.js Canary version, since this feature is still experimental. And then you will need in your Next.js config to enable the experimental flag of partial pre-rendering. And then, for example, here in my, my blog post page, I will use the comments section. So I choose that the comments section will be rendered with a cache that is specified to no source. So let's say that my blog is so popular, and each time I have some sort of comments coming up. So I want that comment section to be a real-time data. So what I will do here is I will wrap the components list, the comments list component into a suspense, and add in the fallback of the loading comments. So this is basically just a UI with the loading states. And then in my comments list component, I have here called my API with a cache no store. So it will, for each render, we will have fresh data. And yeah, that's it. So let's see how it is working in the browser. So this is my blog post page. So this, when I will click on a new post, we will see that we are served. The contrast is a bit bad, but we have here a bit of the placeholders, and then we are served with the comments section. So if I didn't choose the partial pre-rendering for this page, we will have to wait. We will have a blank screen waiting for all the comments to fetch to show the whole page, even that the first part of the post is static, or it's not dynamically rendered with a cache no store. So yeah, I have also this link, so you can check it and play with the Next.js demonstration by mimicking the slow network connection. And now let's try to answer the. OK, let's try to answer the question of this talk. Is this feature actually a hype or innovation? So I would like first, since you already have now a little knowledge about partial pre-rendering, who think that this feature is a hype? OK. And who think it's an innovation? OK, that's good. So I try to be as much objective as I can in this presentation. So I try to list the reasons why I think this is a hype and why I think it's an innovation. The first thing why I think this feature is a hype, because first of all, it's not ready for production. It's still experimental. I have played with it and faced a lot of issues, which is expected since it is still experimental and I'm using the Next.js Canary version. But I hope that it will be fixed soon, either on beta or it will be stable. The second argument that I find why this feature is a hype, because we will have a sort of problem with a cumulative layout shift. So what this cumulative layout shift means, it's a core web vital measuring the visual stability. So as I showed you in my little demonstration here, So we see that we have a little bit of padding between the comments and the actual placeholder. And after the page loaded, we saw that a little of weird gap between the actual fallback and the actual data we have at the end. So if we didn't put too much attention on the fallback and we rendered a random loading screen, we will have this sort of cumulative layout shift that is a little bit weird and perturbing for the user. Yeah. Another thing why I think this a hype thing, it's because it's a little bit confusing. You know, you will think each time, OK, what are the static components of my page? What are the components that need to be dynamically rendered? How my page will behave? What is the fallbacks that I should define? So you will need to add extra efforts to actually build your whole page to benefit from this feature. And speaking of that, I think it's also added an extra layer of complexity. I think that people right now still confused with the new app router architecture of Next.js. They are still having some difficulties to migrate from Next.js 12 to the new Next.js app router architecture. So adding this partial pre-rendering on the top of it, especially for people who are used to the old Next.js versions, will be a little bit confusing. And last thing is, it's a Next.js thing. You know, we are not sure that this partial pre-rendering strategy will be present on other React frameworks. We are not sure if it will be present just in Next.js or also in React or in Remix. So it will require some efforts to learn some kind of features that are specified to just this framework. Now, I want to explain, on the other hand, why I think this feature is an innovation. So I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. First of all, I think this feature looks promising, as we saw from the votes of the audience. I think it will save on resources by loading on the cached pages, and especially the components that don't change, leaving the holes just for the content that should be rendered on real time. And this means that instead of having the blank screen at the first of the load, we will be served with some content that will fill our page. And then we will be just waiting for the rest of the details filling in smoothly with the suspense boundaries. I also think that if the Next.js team pushed this rendering model further, and try to use it as the default rendering model for the dynamic pages will be so good. So as I mentioned before in my blog post page, just because I have that little views component, it opts out for my whole page to be dynamically rendered, which is bad. So if the Next.js in the future could detect that, OK, you have just little components that are dynamically rendered, let's just opt for the partial pre-rendering for your whole page, so I can benefit from the first initial visual. Also, since this feature was introduced without learning new APIs, so you will just have to add that flag in your next config.js file, and you will have everything set up automatically, making the developer experience much smoother and with less hassles, of course. And last thing, it's a Next.js thing. So what I mean by that is that I find that the team behind Next.js made a lot of efforts to build web applications that we currently use at the moment and web applications of the future. For example, I could state how the Next.js team collaborated with the React team to leverage React server components. So I'm pretty optimistic that if this rendering model proves to the community that it's fully working and optimized for the different rendering strategies, maybe we can see a collaboration with the React team to bring it to React, and also maybe we will see in the future in other React components. So that's it for me. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned, you will find all the demonstrations, slides, everything in my personal website. So thank you.